It's live, but it's dark, right? Oh, it's bright. Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to week 5. This past week, I've been in the Adirondacks with my good friend from college's family at their family lake house. I'm very lucky to have been invited and for Molly to have been invited. It was amazing. It was wonderful. It was a lot cooler than it is here. It is now mid 90s Fahrenheit and very, very, very humid. However, can you hear me? Can you all hear me? However, it was nonstop being around people, which I'm not used to. And Molly slept in their room with me, so I basically didn't sleep. And I rarely ever drink, but I just became a different person and drank every night. So last night, I got back last night. Hello. It sounds like you can hear me. Got back last night, drove 6 hours, slept 10 hours last night. Very groggy. It's so hot outside. It's horrible here. So I'm in this overheated, groggy, finally getting back to a normal sleeping schedule. Do any of you this is actually sort of similar to the fuck it diet, but once you start sleeping, you're actually groggier for a little bit before you get used to it. Anyway, that's how I feel. So please forgive me if I stop mid-sentence and I'm not as articulate as I like to be. If I am bad at answering any of these questions, I will make up for it in the group by elaborating on things. The heat is horrible. Who is in this heat wave? Who is on the East Coast of the US? I don't know if the heat is extending to other places in this country. I mean, obviously, this is some horrible version of or horrible manifestation of climate change. It's in the 90s in Colorado. I thought Colorado was supposed to be temperate. I was planning on moving to Colorado to get away from this. Oh no, there's nowhere to go. Okay. So, hello everybody. This has been hopefully a week of a little bit of rest. No reading assignment, just a couple bonus. I think there's just one bonus essay and a couple bonus exercises. And this is the week of the unsucking in, which is another thing that I wish that I had put in the book, because it was something that I thought about all of the time in the beginning of my journey. And not only that, but then once I started thinking about it in terms of coming back into your body and grounding, it actually makes total sense with that. The idea that we're sucking up, and that can we purposely unsuck in and sort of let our energy drop down into our stomach. So I'm looking forward to talking about that if anybody has any thoughts on that. So, oh my God, everyone's in a heat wave. So Daphne says we're in a heat wave in Europe and no air conditioning anyway. I am cranking my air conditioning. Colorado is dry. Okay, well, that does make a difference, I hear. But I guess when you're in the shade, it's okay. When you're in the shade in the humidity, it's just you're just still just dripping and dying. Lauren's in New Jersey. Yeah, Sabrina means dry as in no humidity, which I haven't spent that much time in dry heat, but I do hear that it's a lot better. I was born in a blizzard, and that's where I belong, in the cold. Okay. So, as usual, we're going to talk about anything you want to talk about, asking any questions on this week, which is pretty light, or anything that's come before. Yeah, Sabrina says it makes a big difference, dry heat versus humidity. So if you're in the 90s and dry heat and don't want to go outside, just imagine it is horrible. It is horrible. Lauren said I could never live without air conditioning. I couldn't either. I am like an angry person in the heat. Like I just for months, and then every year I'm like, okay, well I'm choosing to live here. So at a certain point, got to get out. But I was really happy to get to go to the Adirondacks, which was still hot, but not quite like this. Okay, so I'm actually going to start answering the questions that were already asked just to get a head start. And please ask questions along the way, and I will answer them as well. So Daphne said, I sucked in today, like sucked in your stomach, when my picture was taken in the lake. I eat a lot and it sometimes feels like a binge. I gained weight. Sometimes I feel okay about it. Sometimes I panic. That's very normal part of the process to go back and forth. And it's like when you are able to trust the process, you feel okay about it because you understand why it's happening. And then sometimes you panic because the cultural stuff gets in your way and you think this can't possibly be normal. I'm being irresponsible and all of that. So all of the tools and all of the discussion and all of the writing exercises are meant to help you to continue to come back to, what do I know to be true? What do I know to be true? What would I need to experience? And to work through all of the things there, not only to work through the beliefs, but to keep coming back to like writing a letter from your body, connecting with what your ancestors would have thought about food and weight, talking through all of the diets that you've ever been on to understand, what we need to unravel. So it's normal, and the work in here is meant to help to unravel the process so we begin to feel less and less panic, and it can become more and more intuitive. Lauren said, just finished binge listening to every one of your podcasts and can't wait for more. Are you going to record more when you finish this program? Yes. I just needed to take a break from the podcast and kind of maybe reimagine it a little bit. I feel like what I want to start doing, and I don't know exactly what this is going to look like, but I want to start sharing other people's stories. I feel like I want to share both people who've gone through either the fuck it diet or a very fuck it diet way of healing your food relationship with food and body, and also other people in the body positivity space. I feel like sharing stories is a really, really powerful way of helping. And I think it's really helpful to hear stories. And I think that it's also a way to, for a long time, I was like, I just want this to be the Caroline show where I get to just talk about, I just get to sort of like teach, and I get to sort of just to lecture sort of through people's questions. I feel like that was great, but I feel like now it will be really helpful to have more people share their experience, especially because everyone does have a different experience and everyone does have a unique sort of set of circumstances that can help to kind of expand this work even further and like expand how it connects with people who are experiencing different things. Lauren said, I feel more comfortable with eating and find myself slowing down because I know the food will always be there. That is great. And that's something that you can't, again, it's like you can't just tell yourself to do that and like promise yourself that the food will always be there. You have to prove it to yourself through actually eating. You said, I told Taylor Gage from that was my brain being broken. She Thrives blog to interview you on her podcast. Oh, that's wonderful. I don't know her, but I will look her up after this. Taylor Swift. Taylor Gage. All right, I'll look at that later. She Thrives. Cool. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, like everything that anybody has ever done to share, I feel like the book, I feel really lucky that there's like a grassroots, like sharing with your friends and sharing with your family. And I feel like a lot of people are doing that, or sharing with other people, and that it's growing really organically that way. And it's wonderful, because I am not like a publicist, and I just can't think that way. And my what is it called? My publisher's publicist really sucked with this book, but it's working on its own, because people, want to share with their friends. So I'm very, very thankful to everyone who tells anybody about this in an organic way. And I want you to understand what I'm going through, or I think you would be helped by this. And then also the other thing that I couldn't wish for anything better is that lots of eating disorder therapists and eating disorder dietitians are prescribing it to their clients. And that was my big fear, that like people who I respected wouldn't like the book, but I'm just really thankful. And it also gives me heart, like, oh, this is corroborated essentially by people doing similar work in different areas. So I'm really thankful for that. Lauren said, it was super helpful to hear all those questions on the podcast. It is a great accompaniment to the book. I'm so glad. Okay, anyone who's watching live, post your questions, but I'm going to start answering the questions that were asked ahead of time. And the first one is from Elizabeth, and she says, I really want to incorporate more exercise, an earlier bedtime, and less alcohol in my life, as I feel like all of these would make me feel better and help process stress and emotions. And your intuitive feeling around that is probably correct. I have been avoiding implementing these self-care items, though, as each time I think of them, my inner voice says things like, yes, let's go to bed early. Then we will be more rested and eat less, and we will be thin. Yes, let's cut back on alcohol because we will feel better and ingest less calories, etc. The same goes for food. The more neutral I get with eating and more excited my inner voice, oh, this is fascinating. And I'm sure that people really, really relate to this. The more neutral I get with eating and the more excited my inner voice gets that we've cracked the code. I think I read that wrong, but you understand what I'm saying. For example, the other day I had a banana because I wanted it, and my inner dialogue was like, yep, we are craving fruit. We're almost healed and we'll be eating healthy and losing weight soon. After I have these thoughts, I usually overeat, of course. I still think my inner voice is progressing because at least now it considers my mental and physical health. Before the fuck it diet, all I cared about was being thin. My question is, do I move forward with these and other self-care acts even though my inner dialogue is still somewhat diet focused, or do I need to wait until it's more neutral? I feel like many others have asked this question before, but I'm still not clear how to move forward. It feels like a catch-22. This is such a good question. Such a good question. And it's very, very well articulated. And so I thank you for asking it. I want to applaud you for your self-awareness and for your honesty around the way that your brain is working. Because as I have said many, many, many times, at a certain, what am I trying to say? At a certain point and in a certain way. Oh no, be quiet. Okay. In a way, that's what I wanted to say. The only thing we can do is have that self-awareness, because it's impossible to just stop the way your brain thinks. Yes, you can retrain it. You can have a dialogue with it. You can hope that in time and through reprogramming and through learning, you will start to shift it, and you will. However, without taking the actual steps, there's no way to just stop it and like reprogram it in a second. It's not a quick fix. And so the answer is, I think that it's totally fine to, even though you're having those thoughts, to take steps forward in those little self-care things that you feel compelled to make. You want to incorporate more exercise, an earlier bedtime, and less alcohol in your life. They probably will make you feel better and help you process stress and emotions as well. And if in the back of the mind, my brain is like truly groggy. I slept like 10 hours so hard. Okay. If in the back of your mind, you keep having those diet thoughts and maybe I'll actually also like my eating will become perfect and my metabolism will be perfectly healed and my stress levels will go down, which means that my health will be better, which means that I'll be skinnier, all those things that we think, right? And there's a part of me in the book that does use, and I said this last time, that does use that desire to be the healthiest that we can and to heal our metabolism and to have the body working the way it's meant to work, or as close as possible to that in what our actual body is, because we all do have our own health things, which is also normal. I use that as a way to inspire people to stop dieting. So just like I said last week, there is the danger to turn that into the diet mentality, but you're very, very aware of and honest about how your brain is working there. So I think it's totally fine to start to incorporate those things and continue to be honest with yourself around when your brain is doing that. When are those things popping up? How are they manifesting in your life? Are they becoming a obsessive way to do self-care? If that's the case, ease off on it or try a different way. Or, there's no way to really know how to navigate this until you begin to navigate it, if that makes sense. So I think it's perfectly fine to start trying to incorporating those things and implementing an earlier bedtime, and then see what comes up. See what it feels like. See if you can, as you do that, begin to follow what is intuitive and coming from a place of really what feels good and what feels right, and what's coming from a place of control and perfectionism and anxiety. And I think that that's really the only way to do it. And as you try it, you'll notice. You'll definitely notice the same thing that you're talking about right here, but you may need to implement those things to realize, it really did help this part, or it really didn't help this part. And that's okay, if you know what I mean. So if your question was, should you just hold off on any little pieces of self-care just because part of your brain hopes that it's going to heal every area of your life? No, just continue to have the dialogue with yourself that nothing is a cure-all. But that doesn't mean that little pieces of self-care can't be wonderful for you. And try to, I feel like I have to do this over and over again with so many different areas of my life, but I can become perfectionistic about a lot of things. And then I need to have the moment where I realize what I'm doing. And I have to soften, and I have to do the morning pages or the brain dump, and I have to do the breathe and feel, and I have to just sort of like come back to myself and realize what I'm doing. And that's okay. And that's a totally normal and actually really self-aware way to go about life. So I hope that answered your question. Really, the short answer is incorporate those things and then see what happens and see how you feel, and continue to be honest with yourself around the way your brain's working. And that's really all you can do. Because sometimes people make amazing strides on the FACA diet and totally change the way they eat and live and think. And a year and a half later, they realize that they had been secretly hoping for XYZ. It doesn't mean that those things didn't help them. It doesn't mean that they came really, really far. It just means that there are new beliefs to work through. And so taking steps forward and just being aware of what it brings up is safe. And I hope that that's helpful. All right, now I'm going to check the group. Lauren said, my husband is a normal eater, and I find that when I was eating healthier, he weighed less. However, now that I'm not on the FACA diet, I find he weighs more. Therefore, do you think if we listen to our bodies more, we can weigh less? Not because we're on a diet, but because we have better habits and intuition. I think this is probably for your husband, if you truly believe that he generally listens to himself, we have a weight set range, right? So it's normal to fluctuate within that. And our weight set range often does not look like what we have been told health looks like. Some people are naturally thinner and have their range here, and some people are naturally bigger and have their range here. And I think that if maybe he's enjoying more, decadent foods, or I don't know if you think it's because you guys are eating together and so he's eating slightly different things, but it's not abnormal to go up a little bit in your weight and still be in your stable place, if that makes sense. So what's your really question? Do you think if we listen to our bodies more, we can weigh less, not because we're on a diet, but because we have, I think that there are more factors that influence it. I think that there are, for instance, I tend to gain a little bit of weight in the winter and lose a little bit of weight in the summer without doing anything to make that happen. But it might be because I eat a little bit lighter in the summer because I'm so fucking hot. And I eat more fruits in the summer, and I just have like a different way of living. And I'd like to say I walk around more, but like everything is harder. I fucking hate the summer. There's the argument that in the winter, we really do slow down and hold on to weight in order to keep ourselves alive and insulate us. But there are subtle shifts in my lifestyle that have nothing to do with healthier or less healthy, that do subtly affect my weight, that cycles through the seasons. And so I don't think it's as much about like, if I listen really, really well, I lose a little bit of weight. It's more like slight different lifestyle shifts lead me on a normal fluctuation. And I say that because I think it's a slippery slope to say, like, if you listen really, really, like if you're really listening to your body, you'll be at the very, very bottom of your weight set range. And I don't think that that's necessarily true. I think that tweaks sometimes into the disordered and into the, if I'm listening right, I'm going to eat the smallest amount possible. And I just don't think that that's necessarily the healthiest. I mean, maybe I think that there's a range, and I think that that's what I'm trying to say. And I hope that that is helpful. I hope that that makes sense in a way. And that I answered your question. Let me know if that makes sense, or if you have any follow-up questions, and I'll see if my foggy brain can answer it. Okay, so Molly asks, this is one of the ones from ahead of time. I'm really, okay. She said, I'm sorry to ask the same kind of question again as last week, but I'm really struggling with the breathe and feel. For some reason, I cannot get my head around it. Why do we do this, please? Why do we want to bring ourselves back into our body? She asks a couple questions. So I guess I'll read the whole thing and then I'll try to address each question. What do you mean by energy work? I do not know what this is. Is the breathe and feel something that is helpful when I'm stressed out? The answer quickly is yes, because we kind of condition ourselves when we're stressed out not to feel, and it becomes like a backlog of emotions that need to be felt anyway. And often we will use a vice to numb out as opposed to just feeling. So yes, it's helpful to use breathe and feel when you're stressed out, but it's not always possible. Sometimes it's just too difficult, and we have to kind of feel the stress later, which is also what the breathe and feel tool is for. She said, I've had a very stressful and emotional week, and I've tried to do the breathe and feel even once sitting in my car in the supermarket car park as I was tearful and upset. Now, you didn't say how that felt. How was that for you? I'm curious to hear after this call back in the group, because you're not live on the call. You said, is it to do with when you talk about fight or flight, how animals let go of this as soon as they have finished needing it by shaking, and humans do not? Is this helping us let go? I'm just so confused about it. Sorry, as I know you spoke about it a lot on the call last week, but I'm still not sure. Okay, I wrote a little bit and I responded. So I'm going to start with that and then I'll elaborate a little bit. But basically, the purpose of the breathe and feel tool is because we don't tend to feel, to be willing to feel our emotions in real time. And often we're not willing to feel our emotions even after the fact. So this isn't true for everybody, but we have a resistance to feeling our emotions. And instead we turn to different ways to numb out and to feel less. That's why we have any of the vices that we have. Any sort of, addiction is often a way to feel less. It's a coping mechanism and it's an understandable one, but the way to heal it from the root, like if you just take away the vice, you're just going to find another vice, because that's the way that we're coping. We're used to not feeling. So the purpose of the breathe and feel is to, in a very, very manageable way, begin to come back into the body, as opposed to avoiding feeling the body, to come back into the sensations in the body and begin to feel and to notice that it's doable. So some ways to numb out is sometimes people use food, especially people who diet. Sometimes it's using dieting to numb, and sometimes it's using any other vice, whether it be, an addiction to your phone, an addiction to praise, an addiction to alcohol. The way to end that cycle is to begin to start feeling the things we've not been able to feel. And so the purpose of the tool is to have a really, really actionable way to begin to do that and begin to practice doing that and to begin to make that a habit to actually feel what's going on, as opposed to whatever we do when we panic and numb. When we don't feel, we also can be run by our emotions because there's so much backlog that we haven't felt and don't even know is there, that it spills out in rage or sadness or any kind of emotional outburst that we can't control or don't understand. It's because of a backlog. It's because it's all being pressed down and numbed out, as opposed to felt. The purpose of me mentioning the fight or flight, that part of the book is really to just give another way to explain what I mean by having this backup of emotions and energy waiting to be felt. So it was the slightly more scientific way of explaining what I actually mean, because it's a little bit woo. I mean, it's true, but it's also, to some people, they're like, okay, so you're saying that where are my emotions? Like, what do you mean they're in, like, if there's a backlog, like, where are they? Well, they're in the nervous system, and they're also in the tissues, but basically we hold this tension in our bodies. It's also why I talk about when people get massages or do a deep stretch, they actually can feel emotions because it's stored in our body, but it's also stored in our nervous system, which is why I talk about the fight or flight response and what happens when we don't feel. Now, there's no shaming people when they don't feel, that's not the purpose. I'm not trying to say stupid humans, you like how stupid you are to not feel. It's not that. It's totally understandable. A, because it can be really painful and scary. B, because we're never taught any of this. And C, because it can be really helpful to have coping mechanisms if we're going through a horrible time. But there are side effects and it can affect your life. It's comparable to Dieting. It can be really helpful for a short time to try and fit in and get all this praise, right? But it actually has negative side effects long term. And it's much better to get to a place where you're actually listening to your body and accepting your body for where it wants to be. I hope that that is helpful. If this is something that isn't resonating with you, that's okay. You can give it time. You can sit with it a little bit more. Maybe we can have people in the group kind of try to explain it from their perspective, like how this landed with them, what the purpose of the breathe and feel tool is, and what the purpose of feeling, coming back into our body and feeling is in the first place. But that is hopefully what I said there resonates a little bit. And if not, we'll just continue this conversation. And if it feels like something that's too out there to really understand right now, maybe you just need a little bit of time, and maybe it'll make sense in a couple of months. But I hope that what I said was clarifying. I'm going to go back into the group and see. So Lauren, in response to talking about her husband being a little bit heavier now that she's eating a little bit more, you said, yes, I agree with that. I was just curious because I noticed the difference in his body with him being a normal eater. Yeah, I think that the whole definition of normal eating is that you don't need to overhaul everything when you gain a couple pounds, that it's okay to let your body fluctuate in that way, and that a normal eater and someone who generally listens to their body will stay within a range in an easy and intuitive way. Now, again, that doesn't mean that other things can't affect this, like thyroid and even having high stress hormones can make you gain weight just because of cortisol. And it, people look at it as this horrible thing, but I think that there must be something protective in it happening. So other things can happen to make people gain weight, side effects from drugs. I genuinely think that, in a more polluted environment, people have gained weight as a way to protect themselves against pollutants, because that is literally what it does. Pollutants are safe in our bodies when they're stored in fat tissue. And then when you lose weight, it can release them, which is really bad for you. So all of this way of looking at fat as this like really terrible thing, when I think that there are many, many, many reasons why it can be protective. In many ways. And so I think that perspective shift can be really helpful to realize that it's not always something going horribly wrong. Though sometimes, of course, again, like if it's a thyroid thing, like, it's helpful to take thyroid hormone because those hormones affect so many other things in your body too. Sonia says, I haven't really given much thought to the emotional eating element of my eating as a coping mechanism. I find I feel a general sense of malaise, but I'm not sure how to name what's bothering me. I mean, it makes sense that I'm eating as a way to medicate, but I guess I don't know how to unpack what the issue is. So we haven't technically gotten there yet, but the brain dump is an amazing way to begin to kind of uncover what's really going on, as well as the breathe and feel. They're very, very, very simple and actionable ways to begin to feel and work through what's really going on. But the other great thing about emotional eating is that once you're not dieting, emotional eating does not give you the high and the numbing that it has the power to do when you're dieting. So it's the same thing as like feeling addicted to food when you're dieting and everything tasting so good and dreaming about food and like and the binge being this huge relief. We have this chemical addiction to food when we're dieting because we need to. We are in this suppressed sort of famine state where we aren't eating enough food. And so the body has to rewire to make food the most pleasurable pleasurable and rewarding feeling. But when you get out of that cycle, it's like people saying like, well, like food isn't as exciting anymore. Like it's still good, I guess, but like it's just not the same. And the good news there is that it doesn't have the same power to numb. And so that's why a lot of people who go on the fuck it diet and who do heal their eating find that emotional eating kind of falls away, because it literally doesn't have the same like sort of drug-like effect when you're not in this crazy yo-yo. And the purpose to then say, okay, well, so can we also just begin to feel a little bit more, is because if you do have a lot of emotions that you avoid, or past trauma that you haven't processed, or anything else that you used eating to sort of medicate, which then does easily fall away when you stop going on the diet binge roller coaster. What humans do is when they take away a vice, they often just add a new one in. So you could easily replace it with alcohol or smoking or exercise addiction or any sort of vice to then not feel, which is why it is important to begin to have coping mechanisms that will actually allow you to work through the thing that we've been numbing in the first place. So that is one of the big purposes of the emotional part of the breathe and feel, and then coming up, the brain dump as well. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. And that's something that I should write even more about, the idea that eating is more rewarding when we're in this diet binge state. And so it's easier to quote unquote be an emotional eater, and it just doesn't have the same power when we're not in that state anymore. Sonia said, I know you just said that we haven't gotten to the brain dump, but I've already been trying. Is it quote unquote normal to have days of write, and then a couple of days of staring at a blank paper page? Yes, it's very, very normal. You can make it as mundane as, I don't know what to write about. This is boring me. I feel like I need to get to all the things that I need to do. I need to do this. I need to do that. My stomach feels weird today. I'm pretty tired. I really don't like this, blah, 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 blah. Because that sometimes, a half a page in or a page in, something, it taps into something else. But it's very, very normal to just be quote unquote blocked. And the interesting thing is that this is a tool that I did take from a book about creativity, and so this is a tool to actually unblock creativity as a way of like clearing out the gunk in your mind. And so it kind of makes sense. And it may also work in that way for you. Lauren says, yes, it has lost its power, meaning eating, which I didn't think was possible. So that's a really, really good thing. And that is the goal. But of course, it makes sense that people then kind of get bummed out, because it was a drug. Dieting was a drug. And then binging on dieting, which is inevitable for most people, is also a drug. So it makes sense that we're sort of losing our drug. And just so you don't replace that drug with another drug or another sort of addiction or another way to numb, that is the purpose of these tools that help you begin to work through the emotional and mental pieces of this journey as well. Sonia said, I wasn't prepared for the fluctuations. You weren't prepared for the fluctuations in the brain dump, or just anything? Okay, I'm going to continue reading the questions that were asked ahead of time. But first, I'm going to take a sip of this mango kombucha. I genuinely love kombucha. I know some people don't, and that's fine, but I love it so much. Okay. Next question. I'm really struggling with friends and family going on and on about health and eating. What I mean is them saying that being fat is unhealthy, and they think that I'm using this as an excuse to eat whatever I want, stuff my face continuously. I only told 2 friends that I'm on the fuck it diet. Others that it is through NHS, as it's too exhausting being told it's wrong. And I figured that if I said the NHS, then no criticism. I think that that was smart. I know everything in the book about health at every size, but when I try and talk about this, I'm shot down. That's really hard. I just want to start off by saying I really empathize with how difficult that is. And I do think, and I say in the book, that I think that this is the hardest part. I think that the hardest part is dealing with people who basically make it so much harder, who like challenge you on it, and who you feel like you have to basically, it's like you're trying to take care of their emotions as well as yours. You're trying to take care of their worry and panic and judgment and their own eating and health issues and beliefs that are affecting them, but also are being projected onto you. 2 friends have very high blood pressure and have been told they must lose weight as it is making it worse, so they use this against me. I just do not know how to deflect all the criticism and comments about what I'm doing, which they seem to think is eating myself into an early grave. I've tried saying that this is helping my mental health, but this has not worked. It is upsetting as it makes me doubt what I'm doing on the Fuck It diet. I'm so sorry, Molly. This is truly I think it's the hardest part. It is. So, and because the reason that it's the hardest part is because there's no straightforward answer, because everybody has a, like, it's easy to say like, cut those people out, but that's easier said than done. And so in some ways you may need to, for at least for a time, for some of the people who you aren't as close with, or who really are not being empathetic, or who are not willing to listen. But I know that you can't do that so easily with everybody. So I think it's a matter of either putting up really hard boundaries that, again, people do not always respect, but saying, look, I don't want to talk about this anymore, and continue saying that to them. Or you can use the eating disorder card. Tell them that you have an eating disorder and that you're trying to heal an eating disorder. Now, again, people don't understand that because they think that eating is an eating disorder too. You could also ask them to read the book Body Respect. And the reason that I start with that one is because it is extremely science-based. And I think it goes right after the weight beliefs in a very scientific way. So I think that that is a really great book to hand naysayers. And it can be an entry point. Now, does that mean that they will listen to you and read it? Does it mean that they'll read it and not still have their own, we literally learn through the lens of our beliefs that we already have, if we're not really willing to re-examine those beliefs. So it can be really, really hard to get through to people, and it can be impossible. So I don't have an answer for you. And I know that that's really, really hard because we can't control what other people think and what they do. The only thing that we can do is to work through the beliefs that they are triggering in you. What are the fears that they are kind of igniting, and that they are triggering, and that they are, if you didn't believe anything they were saying, it would be a lot easier not to listen. But because we fear that maybe they're right, or maybe it matters what they say, or maybe I could diet my way to better friends. I mean, that's sometimes what it feels like in the moment. And I think to do that inner work around all of the fears that they're sort of exploiting in you, whether they know it or not, is where we have to start. At the same time, we can try to set boundaries by saying, look, I have had an eating disorder my whole life. I know you don't understand, but I don't want to talk about this anymore. We can talk about it in a year, but you need to leave me alone or whatever. And they probably won't listen, but maybe they will. And maybe the ones that do listen are the ones that you should spend more time with if you even have that control. I do recommend gifting them the book Body Respect or telling them to read the book Body Respect. You could say, look, I don't want to talk about this anymore. I recommend you read the book Body Respect, and then I'd love to talk about this with you afterwards, but I really can't. And maybe you've already tried that, but if you haven't, I think that that's something that you can do. And it's very possible that I think a lot of what's happening is that it is triggering shame and fear in you. And that makes it hard for us to put up boundaries because we feel like we don't deserve to, or that we're doing something shameful or wrong. But yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's really, really hard. There's no part of me that's saying like, it's simple, just do X, Y, Z, and then everything will be fine. It's hard. This is like interpersonal relationships. This is a huge paradigm shift, and people feel so strongly about it that it is not easy to change people's minds, to do this thing that's so counterculture. It is hard. It is hard. I mean, I feel it in being somebody who writes about this. I find it really, really hard to talk about what I do with people who I don't know because people feel so strongly about it. And I just don't even want to get into it because everyone's so fucking annoying. So, but at this point, it doesn't affect the way I feel about myself. It doesn't affect the way that I eat. But in the beginning, when it does, that's the hardest part. How can I protect this journey? How can I protect the way I feel about myself without everyone else's bullshit getting in the way? It's hard. It's so, so hard. And so, of course, I don't really know what the situation is. I don't know who these people are in your life. I don't know how much you have to. I mean, I know that they're friends, but how often do you have to be around them? What kind of personalities do they have? How much, will they ever respect boundaries of yours? These are all things that I don't know the answer to because I don't know the specific situation, except to say that it is extremely hard. See what boundaries you can set, see if they'll read Body Respect. And the only thing that we truly have control over are the things that they're triggering within us. Because if we didn't believe the things that they were saying, it would roll off of our shoulders a lot easier. Still not easy to live in a world that's constantly judging you. It's really, really hard. But in doing something so counterculture, those are the only things that we can really do. And I think that this last question is an extension of that. You ask, lastly, what do you suggest to those of us that are struggling to eat freely in front of others? I find it easy to eat on my own, but with friends and family, I'm too embarrassed to eat what I want as I feel judged about eating too much. I think just be really kind to yourself about it. Like, it makes sense that you don't want to eat in front of people who are judging everything you're eating. And I think that it's okay. I think that if you're around people who are actively judging you, that you're protecting yourself by just being like, I'll eat later, and that's fine. I'm giving you full permission to just be like, I don't want to deal with you right now. I don't want to deal with this. I'm just going to eat later. Of course, what I want for you is to be able to eat freely in front of everyone and be like, leave me alone. I'm just a person eating. But if right now, especially, you're finding it too much and you're fielding too many comments, just tell yourself, you know what? If the way to get you to shut up right in this moment is to just not eat as much as I want to and just make up for it later when I go home, that is totally fine. Is it ideal? No, because there are so many like stressful things that can come along with that too. But if it's a lesser of two evils, what is the thing that's the least stressful? It might honestly be just doing what you're already doing. I hope for you that in time you'll have more confidence in it and it won't be as much of a big deal. Also, in front of strangers, like notice when you're doing that in front of strangers. See if you can challenge yourself there, because you don't know what they're thinking, and it honestly doesn't matter what strangers are thinking. I understand why it feels like it matters what your friends and family are thinking, because they will, it sounds like no matter what you tell them, they're not shutting up in actively and vocally judging you. And so you're literally just trying to navigate a really difficult situation. And so whatever you need to do to make it feel a little bit easier, I think is what you should do. And so I think it's okay what you're doing. But then on the flip side, notice when you feel like, for instance, with strangers, you may be projecting into their minds what other people have already said to you. And that's where you can challenge yourself to be like, A, I don't know that they're thinking what I think they're thinking. And B, it doesn't even matter what this stranger who's thinking. Fuck them. I'm going to eat what I want to eat, and challenge yourself there. So that's the best advice that I can give in that situation. Protect yourself around people who are being assholes to you, and challenge yourself around people who you don't know what they're thinking, and it doesn't matter what they're thinking. It doesn't matter what your friends and family are thinking either, but it does matter if they're bothering you about it. It like that affects you, So all the empathy in the world to you, because it's hard. Okay. Now I'm going to answer. Whoa. Okay. There are lots of things people have said. All right. Yay. Whoa. I have to go really far back. Okay. Now that I've gone back. Okay. I'm going to drink a little bit of this, and then I'm going to read all these comments. Sonia said, I said earlier this week that I thought I'd gotten closer to neutrality with food, and then I had a day of eating a whole box of toaster strudel, which confused me. That's so normal. Fluctuations in hunger and in your relationship with food as you do this, especially if this is the first few weeks or first few months, so normal. So normal. You said, then I had days of not being able to do the brain dump. Yes. So fluctuations in all things. Humans, anything that is natural fluctuates and changes. There are seasons for everything. Nothing except things that are dead are like, don't fluctuate. So it's all normal. Lauren said, dieting is a drug. That is such a profound way to look at it. Love that reframe. Thank you. You are welcome. Dieting is a fucking drug. And Sonia said, that's what I meant by fluctuation. I wasn't prepared to have days of, it's hard because people are writing. And so I'm not answering in the order that you're actually trying to give a full thought. Sabrina says, trying to take care of their emotions is so true. So this is when I was talking about people telling Molly that she's being irresponsible. This morning, I mentioned to my grandmother I had a conference at 11, so she wouldn't ask more, but she did. And when I said it was for eating disorder, her response was, I didn't think you had one. Well, that's nice for you, Grandma. It's true. Oh, people are exhausting. Daphne said, it's not getting rid of the clothes that don't fit me and fitted me last summer, not so long ago, not while on a diet, is a sort of a mental block, like me hoping to fit in them sometime soon. I just can't let go of them, although I normally let go of everything very easily. It is, though I will say, like these days, I sometimes, because I do like fluctuate a little bit like this. And so sometimes I hold on to something and then inevitably when I buy something in the thinner state, then it won't fit me, a little while later. And so sometimes I do hold on to things for a whole cycle and see if it's ever something I can wear again. And then if it doesn't in the whole cycle of the year, then I give it away. Does that make sense? Because that's me being like, well, I don't know, like I do, but I don't want to hold on to something that's too small for me most of the time. So I just feel like that's a stressor that is unhelpful. It's like, but the thing is, like, I really, really fluctuate in shirt size and in bra size, like even just from month to month. And so I've had to just accept that sometimes things are a little tight and I hold on to it for a little bit longer. And if it's just not ever fitting good again, then I give it away. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, it's a block, especially if they're very small for you. But I understand that from a financial, perspective and not wanting to waste things and not wanting to have to get rid of something and then replace it, that we hold on to it. I understand why we do that. But I say if in another, like maybe hold on to these things for another year and then get rid of them. But there is a part of that. And I think in the beginning of this process, it's better to just do a clean sweep. Right now, I'm in a state where like it doesn't feel emotionally taxing to be like, that's too small for me. Like, I don't know why I bought it at my like stressed skinny. Like sometimes when I get really, really stressed too, I lose weight, which just goes to show you it's not good. It's not necessarily good for you. And when I'm happier and calmer, I'm like a little bit higher. And so when I stupidly buy something in that stressed, skinnier state, I don't anymore feel the same emotional attachment to it that I used to over 7 years ago before I started the Fuck It diet. So if you're in the beginning of this process and there is an emotional attachment to wanting to fit into these clothes again, I say it's safer and a better symbolic gesture to get rid of the clothes that don't fit you and to say, you know what, I will replace them. I understand that this is hard even from a like sustainable wardrobe, and like, how expensive is this? And it feels, what's the word? It feels frivolous, but this is a deep emotional attachment that we have that is actually an attachment to control and fitting into not only the clothes that we had, but to society's expectations of, we should never have to buy bigger clothes. And I think that can be really detrimental. So this is a really long answer to your question, but I do think that in the beginning of the Fuck It diet, it's better to just get rid of your thinner clothes and just commit to clothing the body that you have right now. That being said, 7 years into the process, I do fluctuate a little bit. I have found that when I lose weight, it's often because I'm very stressed about something. And when I am happier and calmer, I'm a little bit higher. So I have some thinner clothes that I stupidly buy when I'm in a very stressed state for like a couple months or so. And so I have had to do this, is what I'm saying, in the past couple years at times being like, stupid. Like, why do I ever buy shirts that close here? But I do sometimes hold on to them for a year and be like, no, I have not worn this again. And then I get rid of it. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay. So Sonia said, that's what I mean by fluctuation. I wasn't prepared to have days fluctuation. So thank you for addressing the normality of this. And she said, I just bought Body Respect half an hour ago. Good. It's a really, really good book. And it's also a really good book to gift to people who you hope they maybe begin to see a little bit of what you're doing. Obviously, I love my book and I think that it connects with people in a different way. But it is a little bit more out there and a little bit like a little bit of a younger voice, as opposed to like pretty straightforward science of the book Body Respect, which is very effective in its own way. Sorry, I'm just having a really hard time finding where I left off. Sonia said, Sabrina, my mom's the same way. At least she's respected not talking about food and dieting with me as much. Lauren said, I have been trying to be as open as possible with others, but only explain up to the point that they understand and then let it go, because I know they are not fully grasping the concept. That's what I do too. I usually feel it out. Most people cannot fully grasp the whole thing. And so I only say as much as I think they won't argue with. And then I just sort of like, I have very, very low expectations for people. And I find it really exhausting to have to like convert people. I mean, I don't even do that in my business. I'm not in the business of like trying to convert people who are not at least partially ready to hear what I have to say, because I don't think it works very well. I think it takes someone who's experienced this enough to be like, oh, that does make sense, as opposed to someone who's so in it, so in a diet mentality. Sam said, one thing I often say is what you're describing, I've tried before and it didn't work for me in my body. I'm trying something new. Try reading X, Y, and Z. That is so good and that's often what I do too. Like, yeah, I used to do that, and this was my experience. And if you're interested in hearing more about this, try reading XYZ. It's a really effective way because they can't argue with it if that was your experience. And if they say, well, have you done this? Yeah, no, I've done that too. And it really didn't work for me. And if you're interested in hearing more about why, try reading Body Respect, The Fat Good Diet. It's great, Sam. Jennifer said, I feel like sometimes we have to set really firm boundaries with other people and then reinforce them. Like, I am not willing to talk about this. It's my choice. And then remember, I'm not willing to talk about this. Let's talk about something else. Yep, this is really good advice. It takes a lot of confidence, though. And in response to Molly's question, I sense that Molly is having a crisis of confidence, which I totally empathize with. It's really hard to set boundaries when we're having a crisis of confidence. However, the catch-22 and the irony is setting those boundaries help you build confidence and create the safe space to build confidence. Jennifer said, none of us owe anyone else anything or any explanation. And she said, it's hard to remember that. And it is hard to remember that, especially when we're having our crisis of confidence. Sabrina said, I've just gotten to the point where I say I'm recovering from an eating disorder because it'll shut people up faster. And again, that takes a lot of confidence to say. And it is harder for people in larger bodies to say, I've suffered from an eating disorder, because people will immediately assume that the eating disorder is binge eating. And so then when they see you eating a lot, they're going to say, well, it looks like she still has her eating disorder. And so because there's so many cultural misconceptions, it makes it hard. It just makes it so hard. But using the eating disorder card can and should be a way to just make people shut up. And it sometimes won't, because people don't understand. But Sabrina says, I've just gotten to the point where I say I'm recovering from an eating disorder because it'll shut people up faster. I'm just so tired of talking about how and what I eat. Sonia said, what does this mean? Hold on, shoot. It went to the bottom. FWIW, I don't know what that means. I'm going to learn before anyone has to tell me. For what it's worth. Oh, wow, you learn something new every day. Sonia said, for what it's worth, I really appreciate your straightforwardness. This is hard. Thank you for acknowledging it. I truly believe you operate from a sense of empathy, and it's comforting. I'm so glad that you feel that way. Thank you for saying that to me. And I just feel like it's such bullshit to be like, just think like, I don't know. I believe in so many woo-woo things. I really, really do. I believe that in some ways we create our reality, and in some ways there's so much victim blaming in saying we create our reality, because it's there's so many instances where that is not true, and and life is really hard, and people are really cruel, and it's just true. And to kind of like poo-poo that and act like that shouldn't matter, or just like get over it, is not understanding how the human heart works. It's not understanding how trauma works. It's not understanding. It's not help. It doesn't help if people feel like they shouldn't be feeling the way they're feeling. It doesn't help. I believe in the power of positive thinking. I believe in lots of magical things, but you can't ignore the pain. You can't ignore the hard parts. You can't just bypass it. And I think that those two things have to exist together. It's why I think that like mantras, just like think yourself to whatever, like can't work if you aren't looking at the limiting beliefs and the trauma and the pain that you haven't felt, and all of that stuff. Like we need to feel all of it, and we also need to have people empathize with where we are and how hard things can be and how cruel people can be. So I'm glad that it is helpful to hear that, because I think that everything else is gaslighting. Everything else is like, it's victim blaming and it's gaslighting to be like, oh, just get over it. Like, no, that's not how it works. Anyway, I'm glad that it's helpful. Heather said, it's hard for me to change my own mind, and I'm working so hard at doing so. Just a conversation isn't going to change a mind unless they want it changed. Yes, that's why it's so hard to communicate with people and to actually make people understand what's going on. Gallery Chaos said, my doctor had told me to do a 12,000 calorie a day diet. I did it for a few months and never lost weight. He told me last week you need a new doctor. And I'm not even kidding. Like, he told me last week I may need to try an 800 to 900 calories a day. Seriously, you need a new doctor. And I know that that's easier said than done. And I know, like, I don't know if he's a very specific kind of doctor who's maybe hard to find in your area, but that's just not, that's not cool of him. And it's incorrect. And it causes harm. And you deserve a different doctor who will not tell you to take on eating disorder behaviors. Yes, Heather just said, find a new doctor, Gallery Chaos. You said, I actually do like this doctor. This is the first bad advice I've gotten from him. Maybe I should just avoid the weight topic. But if he refuses to avoid the weight topic, I mean, I understand that it's hard if you like him in every other way, but that's a pretty big way, especially if you're trying to heal something that's as difficult to heal as it is, especially with all of the cultural BS that we have to deal with. I really think that you will benefit from a different doctor. If he's giving you that advice, I don't see how he's just going to stop. Maybe he will. Maybe if you put up a boundary, he will. Maybe if you say, I don't know. I know it's easier said than done. You said, I know, when I'm recovering from breast cancer surgery. I'm just thinking about how irresponsible it is to tell you to do that. He said, a drug I had to take slowed my metabolism, so I gained about 30 pounds. The idea that he's telling you to eat less, does he know that? I'm assuming maybe, is he a doctor? Is he a primary care doctor? Is he like an oncologist? I'm curious. Yeah, to tell you to eat that little when it already slowed your metabolism is just so, it's case in point of like what our society thinks A, health is, B, like, it just doesn't even make sense. It doesn't make sense that if it's a side effect, then it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. I'm empathizing with you. I'm not judging you. I'm judging the doctor. Lisa said about eating in public, I found the Instagram tag women eating food very helpful. Yes, hashtag women eating food. Seeing a variety of women simply eating all food mid shoving in the mouth. Awesome. Yeah, go follow that one. It's amazing. I do have a fear of clothes not fitting me that I just bought. When buying clothes, I try not to spend a fortune because money is a concern. Totally. This is another thing. I mean, I could say about so many things, this is the hardest part of the fuck diet, but these very real life practical things that we bump up against, like people making ill-informed and rude and unhelpful, fat-phobic, food-fearing comments. One, having money be a concern and having to overhaul your entire wardrobe, that's stressful. It is. It just is. Yeah. So I understand. I think I might need glasses because remember how I said that? Let me actually see if I can fix this. That's a little bit helpful. Remember how I was like, the words are so white and bright and they're so hard to see. They're kind of doing that again to me. Jennifer said that clothes realization is really helpful. I've been sitting here realizing I've kept clothes from my thinnest period about 8 years ago that I loved and felt reluctant to give away just in case. Again, oh, you said, I need to get rid of them. Again, I understand. In so many ways. I mean, there's a nostalgia. Excuse me, that's kombucha. And it goes beyond just diet mentality and fear of weight. Now, that's probably a huge part of it, but it goes beyond that too, because there's a nostalgia to like, oh my God, I love that. Like, remember when I, was that person and remember that life that I lived. And it's hard to, like, even if it was just an object, some people have a really hard time letting go of objects in that same way. Now, I still think it's a good idea to be like, I don't need you. You're just an object. But again, empathizing with why it's hard and why that there are emotions that may come up and why there's resistance there. Sam said, the brain alone takes 900 calories to function, meaning when you are told to only eat 800 calories, it's like such gross negligence of like nutrition science. It's just so painful. Good point, Sam, Gallery says. I'd be so hangry, it's ridiculous. It's so, Gallery, and I wish I knew what your actual name was. I know that's just I think that's just your YouTube persona. So if you feel like you love your doctor in every respect and that the words that he says to you about eating and food and weight just wash over you and it doesn't matter, then keep your doctor. I think it would be great to say, hey, this is disordered eating, or I've had disordered eating, to put up a boundary and maybe in a little bit way, maybe educate a little bit. Have you ever read the book Body Respect? And the reason that I say Body Respect is because it's so scientific that it's really hard for people to argue with. I think that my book metabolizes the science in a way that is a little bit easier to read and a little bit more conversational, which is why it's good in another way for a different audience. And explaining like how to actually apply that to your life in some ways. But I do think that Body Respect is a really good, like, here's a very readable book about science that will like tell you why what you are saying makes no sense. So basically what I'm saying is, if you feel like your doctor's comments genuinely aren't affecting you, keep your doctor. But I'm guessing that that's hard, especially if you're in the beginning of this process. So you said that he's primary care. You said I probably should dump him, and he told me I have anemia, so there's no way I'd get enough healing nutrients at 800 calories. Exactly. He's just not looking at the whole picture. And that's really hard. A lot of Western medicine doctors do not look at the whole picture either. Primary care is the one who's supposed to look at the whole picture, but it's just not the way that our system works, which is a shame. Sam said I wound up with anemia because of my restrictive eating and anorexia. Yeah. So there's a total misconnect there with him being able to put together those dots. And so I think you deserve somebody who would be able to point that out, because it's actually shouldn't be that hard to miss. Sam Dillon Finch says Healthline also has a great breast cancer community app. Oh, that's so great. I wonder if folks have recommendations. And Gallery Chaos says, oh, wow, Sam, it was probably caused by the 1,200 calorie diet I was on. I had such bad anemia in high school while I was dieting, never put it together with the dieting. Nobody ever put it together with the dieting. I almost needed a blood transfusion. They actually thought that the numbers were incorrect because they thought it was impossible that I'd be walking around. I thought I was very lazy at the time because I couldn't run as fast as other people on the cross country team. Yeah, food is really helpful. That's amazing. Sam, thank you for those resources. And Sam says, Caroline, same. I had less iron in my body than a newborn baby. That is, of course, what I did to try and heal my anemia was become a raw vegan, which I was like, wow, it healed me. But really, like, I had been eating a super, super low calorie diet. And then I was like, okay, I don't need to eat a low calorie diet anymore, but I can only eat like fruit and nuts and coconut oil. And so that I didn't have anemia like a year later. And I took a lot of supplements too. I was like taking all these iron supplements. But no, I don't recommend raw veganism because it didn't help. It made a lot of things even worse. Yeah, they said that I had half the amount of hemoglobin I was supposed to have. And that if it didn't come up within like a week, that I was going to need a blood transfusion. But why don't they have the awareness that eating food would be helpful? And maybe that's why. Oh, cool. Gallery Chaos said, it's Jill. So Jill said, it's Jill. Gallery Chaos is my art site. True. Maybe I could try him one more time and actually educate him. Oh my God. Oh, Sabrina said, I can't help but laugh about raw veganism. I'm sorry. And I'm vegan. Don't apologize to me. Raw veganism is the closest to a cult that any of my diets got. The next one was paleo. But they're all varying degrees of cultish mentality. The ones that have like one leader, I guess, are the most cultish. Like ones that like, and I never actually did any of these, the ones that are like businesses. Like paleo is many businesses, right? It's not just like one person. I don't know. I'm trying to define something that I can't really define. So Jill, I would say it might be a really frustrating exchange with your doctor. And I'm just trying to protect you from having frustrating exchanges. But if you feel up for it, even if he doesn't come around, it could plant a seed that could help other people in the future if he takes time to really digest what you've said. And Sabrina said, I just can't think of what you would eat as a raw vegan. It was a dark time. It was a dark, dark time. I ate a lot of bananas. It was terrible. However, I did just move to New York City for school, for NYU. And I lived like 3 blocks away from a raw vegan restaurant. I'm trying to remember. I had in my book the whole story about this woman who was basically like arrested for fraud because she was in an abusive relationship with some guy, and she was the one who like convinced her like really crazy things, like like basically like a cult leader does. But she was the one who owned Pure Food and Wine and the Pure Food and Wine takeaway, raw veganism, that was 3 blocks from me. It was like I was trying to like tie this into the cult thing, but then I cut it out of the book. I need to find where that is because it was in like a later version of the book than where I pulled the bonus essays for this. I need to try and find it. But anyway, yeah, so I thought it was like meant to be that I was going to be a raw vegan because they had like, I had a dehydrator so you could like make crackers from nuts at like less than 118. Like it was nuts. It really was. Sam said, sadness. You eat sadness when you're a raw vegan. Lisa said, I was raw vegan, lots of cashews. And then I worried that there was too many carbs in cashews. And I was like, oh my God. It's like how people use cauliflower for everything now. Restaurant. But actually the Pure Food and, oh God, I can't speak. The Pure Food and Wine restaurant was like, it was pretty cool, but it was very dark. It was mostly about the wine. It was a gimmick, you know, but so many famous people went there. I saw at the height of The Office, I saw John Krasinski there when I went there with my mom for my birthday, which was more exciting than the food I ate, probably. Lisa's remembering the dehydrator. So we're almost at an hour and a half for this call. So let's do a last call for any questions or comments before we say goodbye for the day. And very soon we move along into the mental section. Now, there's going to be a new reading assignment posted tomorrow. And if anybody doesn't know yet, there is the mass compilation PDF that's in the welcome post that you can download, and you can see all of the reading assignments for every week there, but I also post them new every week. There's going to be a reading assignment. Oh my God, this has been on the whole time. What? There's going to be a reading assignment, some bonus essays, bonus prompts, and then next week, and the brain dump is going to be in this week, but next week I'm going to be offering another audio version of the belief release. And I'm going to be doing both a written one so you can use it while you're writing, and also one for hands-on body that there's no writing at all and you're just using the belief to try and access emotion that's connected to it. That's not this week. That's going to be next week. Sony said, I always thought I was not disciplined enough to do veganism. I'd be successful for like a few hours and then just cheese. And Heather said, there's no way in hell I could do that. Sabrina said, I'm lactose intolerant and was already vegetarian. I miss cheese, but it hates me. Yeah, so it makes sense that it was just an easy thing for you. Sony said, also with the upcoming holiday, I wish everyone strong, lovely thoughts while around our, I'm reading this really wrong. I wish everyone strong, lovely thoughts while around our friends and family. Yes, if you live in the US, this week is the 4th of July, and barbecue time and family time and friends time and hot time. So hot. I hope everyone has a great holiday. I hope that everybody knows that you don't have to do every single writing prompt in order to benefit from this. So if you get behind, it's totally fine. Prioritize the tools, prioritize the reading assignment and the big tools. And the big tools are allow eating always, the lie down, always a sleeper, one that people don't remember to do. Breathe and feel, brain dump, which is coming up. And then eventually it's putting together breathe and feel and the brain dump for ways to really address specific beliefs. Jill says, thank you so much for the feedback, Carolyn and everyone. I actually entertained the 800 calorie thing for a minute. You trust doctors, but reason did prevail. I'm so glad. I do think you should get a new diet. I think that if you're feeling brave and strong and up for it, you can try to put up a boundary and educate him, but I feel like it might be a really triggering exchange. So protect yourself. And this whole time I've been raising my eyebrows because it is so hard to read these words. And I don't know if it means that I need glasses or if white words on a black background just like isn't a nice way to have to read. And they're so tiny. Let me see if I can make them bigger. I could have made them bigger all along. Next time. It's still hard to read. Okay, guys. Sabrina said, I think you need a nap. I think I need a nap. I need to sleep for 10 hours for a week. I'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you for being live on here. Thank you for watching the replay. Thank you for asking questions ahead of time. I hope that this was helpful, and I will talk to you all in the group soon. And have a happy holiday to everybody in the US and people who are not in the US who are taking their own vacation. Goodbye. Yay.